something bothering you?
Just some noise in my core.
Deep down in the depths of Vulcan, you must retrieve the Architect's core.
They will send everything they have to stop us.
You know I would never want to see you hurt. But the path we walk demands the extreme.
I remember you.
Run away.
PlayStation.
The biggest pirate shipwreck of days since the quadruple A. Meet Captain Blood, straight from 2004. It's time to shed. Captain Blood, in stores May 6th. Rated M for mature. Coming Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, Steam, GOG, Epic Games, Mac. What else? PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and for the love of the sea, why not your microwave too?
Together, we will get back what they have stolen from us. Kindred will rise again.
Tell Tweed to back off, or we are going to rain righteous fury down on him.
Listen to me, burnt one. If you're intending to walk the midnight walk, you better be sure to keep your spark safe and burning.
While I was in the black, I had a dream. There was a monster in the woods.
And on you go, like a moth into the burning light.
Took a wander down the midnight walk.
Welcome to Arrakis, the most dangerous planet in the universe. Dune Awakening is a multiplayer survival game on a massive scale, where the open, ever-changing world ensures exploration remains a vital activity. Join us as we traverse the breathtaking landscapes and uncover what the sands have hidden. Follow in the footsteps of the native Fremen and learn to overcome the deadly environment. Collect materials to craft a shelter, still suit, and your first vehicle, then venture into the desert. With a scanning module installed, you can scan for resources in smaller areas, or climb the highest peaks to launch a survey probe, revealing large swaths of terrain and important locations like shipwrecks or abandoned Imperial testing stations. Traverse difficult terrain with tools like the Shigawire Claw and Suspensor Belt, and claim powerful tech and gear. Expand your fleet of vehicles and upgrade them with new modules to suit your playstyle. From the cockpit of the iconic Ornithopter, even the most remote expanses of Arrakis are within your reach. In the deep desert, massive Coriolis storms regularly sweep across the land with monstrous power, changing the entire map every week. As new resources and secrets are revealed, the race to survey the vast new landscape begins anew. Be the first to mark the location of precious resources, then give the map to your allies, or sell it to other players on the exchange. Here, there are no paths to tread, only power to claim. This is infinite exploration. This is Arrakis.
Queen's spell has turned steel to stone and left her army unmatched. Only you can wield the hammer of the gods and bend steel to your will. You have been chosen, Aram Delira. Only you can forge your legend.
What could you possibly say? You're here to kill me.
Let's see your best then, eh? Swordplay is a game of strength. Winning is what matters. And you can bring as many friends as you want.
Not good.
What got them so riled up?
I'm glad you're unharmed.
Who? What?
PlayStation.
Vanilla. Homa.
Seekers of redemption, you were chosen. Band together and prepare to claim the life of the Night Lord.
PlayStation.
Wonder no more! Let all far and wide hear me and tremble! Let all who stand witness be amazed! For I am a descendant of the great progenitor of Azuma, the divine dragon, Mokoshiro! Yep, right here. I'm the one who made you an Earth Dancer. Finally caught up.
That's it! The weird animal!
Woolby! You just ditched me, you jerk! I can't fly very far like this, you know.
We pay you 100-fold. Just say the word.
Aw, yeah, gladly.
Huh? Who's this fuzzball?
I am not a fuzzball! For your information, I am a divine descendant.
Kaguya, your wonderful dad must be so rugged and handsome.
And your mother must be drop-dead gorgeous, just like you.
I wonder who our child will take after most.
Oh, stop it, you big tease!
Hey, I did not say that.